The idea of Mbappe having 2 World Cup winners' medals and Messi having none, that's like Steven Gerrard not having a Premier League title and David May having the treble.
To mention it, right?
Hello and welcome to Yahoo Footballing Weekly, the final World Cup show with me, Neil Humphreys.
Me, Chia, Keong, and him, Matt, from Yahoo. As you can see, Socceroos fan.
How you doing, Matt?
How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me on. Excited to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, the reason we've got Matt on, for several reasons, not only does he work for Yahoo, and he's a big Socceroos fan, but he's just come back from Qatar 2022 itself. 3rd World Cup, Matt?
3rd World Cup. Yep. Missed out on Russia, but came back for Qatar.
All right, let's get stuck into it first. Qatar 2022. What was it like?
I mean, it was great, actually. It was great. And there was a lot of media attention in the lead up around, some of the risks around it and some of the stories around it, especially around the alcohol sales and everything like that. But I have to say that it really was a very well-run World Cup. The stadiums were excellent. They're all brand new. The match day experience was really good. The transportation, the infrastructure was fantastic. I thought the atmosphere and the crowds, especially the North African representation, was incredible as well. It's a funny place, Qatar. It's not exactly what I would call a footballing nation. I went to Brazil, I went to South Africa World Cups as well, and they were a little bit different. That when you get around the towns, you can tell there's really strong footballing culture. There's football coming out of the TVs everywhere, crowds spilling out of the cafes and bars and restaurants watching it, and didn't get quite the same atmosphere from the locals in Qatar, but in terms of the running of it was really great.
Yeah, we saw a couple of stadiums. I wrote a piece about it. In the early stages, a lot of the stadiums weren't full. Is that in anecdotally, was that because Qataris had tickets and didn't bother turning up? Because it can't be they weren't sold.
Well, it's a funny one. The crowd numbers that they were reporting were, in some cases, higher than the capacity of the stadiums themselves. I'm not quite sure who to believe there. From my experience, I went to 6 games. I went to all the Australia games. I went to all the England games as well. And it looked very full from my perspective. I didn't see many empty seats around. And they're reporting the attendances were somewhere in the north of 95% for most games. So what I did notice in most of the games was that the emptying of the seats with 10 minutes to go, with 5 minutes to go, mostly from the expensive seats, which I found a little bit disappointing because you want, the true fans to stay to the end and you wonder how do they come across those tickets? Are they the true fans or, obviously the corporates? So, but by and large, I found the crowds were pretty big and pretty boisterous most times as well.
So obviously one of the joys of being in the place where the World Cup is you get to mingle with the fans, isn't it? So how does it feel, mingling with the fellow Socceroos fans or the English fans around? I
mean, for me, it's the number one appeal of going to a World Cup. It's, when you're there is no politics, there's no tension, there's no divide. It's just all about the football. I saw Americans and Iranians having drinks together. I saw Argentinians and Brazilians having drinks together, which, if you can believe that. Everyone was there to have a great time, support their team.
So there's Englishmen drinking with Aussies?
No, English are on their own. No one drinks with the English. Let's get it right.
The English drink beyond everyone else. They can't keep up with the English all the time. So, connecting with the fans and spending time with your fellow fans there and just the amount of connections that you make while you're there is fantastic. I stayed on the cruise ship, one of the 3 cruise ships that was docked in Doha, and it was great. That was a sort of a football festival atmosphere, 24/7. That each and every nation was almost very well represented there. So it was fantastic, and meeting the different fans and meeting people from all walks of life. It just opens your mind up, and I think that's what's great about football, and that's what's really magnified at a World Cup.
Okay, now. I specifically have been criticised for, saying some things about the human rights issues as someone who wasn't there, almost like an armchair critic. Was there any sense of unease? I mean, the late, great Grant Wall, the journalist, just like to pay tribute to him. He was a fantastic football writer who sadly died at the World Cup. He was, of course, detained at the start of the World Cup for wearing a rainbow-coloured T-shirt. There were 1 or 2 other examples of that. Was there ever a sense of unease or tension in the air, or was that overplayed by the Western media?
Yeah, look, I didn't pick up any from my personal experience, right? And so, I didn't pick up on any of that whatsoever. I found very friendly people wherever we went, whether it be in the stadiums, within the stadiums, or in the transportation, or out within the towns. So I personally didn't pick up on any of that. However, having said that, I didn't try and push the envelope at all either. I knew the rules, I knew the ground rules of going there, I knew what would and would not be tolerated. So, it's not in my nature to push the boundaries in that way.
Did you see any cases of?
Yes, and I heard a lot as well, right? So you mentioned the Grant Wall, and there was, numerous cases of, people wearing pride, whether it be wristbands or T-shirts or banners, or bringing, flags into the stadium. So I think there was a lot of pushback around that, and there was probably a lot of security around those types of instances. I do think there was actually some over-policing of people as well who were carrying banners. If there was an Australian flag banner that the security didn't know about, they didn't maybe recognise the Australia flag, they might be taken off and harassed for 20 minutes to try and find out what is this banner that you're carrying. So I think, it comes down to a knowledge and understanding thing as well. So there was definitely a bit of that. I don't feel it permeated the atmosphere too much, but then again, my experience was I was just not really pushing the envelope.
In fairness, it was the Aussie flag. No one really knows it anyway.
People aren't that used to seeing it in the latter stages of a World Cup at all, so
But some of the criticisms have been the hypocrisy, and you're well placed to talk about this because you've been to 3 World Cups. There is always tensions and human rights issues. There were in South Africa and there were in Brazil. You had right-wing governments there. I remember being in Brazil, the army crackdowns around the cities were like something I'd never seen before. It's quite extraordinary. So do you think there's an element of hypocrisy in terms of the criticism that Qatari has faced? Has it been a bit excessive?
Well, I remember in the lead up to the Brazil World Cup, there was all the stories about the favelas being cleared out in and around Rio. Trying to get people off the streets, and who knows where they were going, and it was to clean the country up, so to say, before everyone arrived. So you do have these issues no matter where the game is being played. You've got USA, Mexico and Canada in 4 years' time, and each of those countries also has their own human rights struggles and issues. Obviously. So, I think it was very pronounced in the lead up to this World Cup. I do think that there was the tendency to then start nitpicking about every potential issue because once the ball starts rolling, then it becomes a very popular way to get clicks online. So there's probably a huge magnifying glass attached to it because of the human rights record in the lead up to it. So for me, I felt perhaps it was slightly overplayed in the lead up a little bit.
Okay. So you've been to the World Cup, you've been to the World Cup, I haven't been to the World Cup finals yet. So for someone who wants to go in the future, what kind of mentality? So what kind of things should you go in with?
Well, go there ready to have a good time and go there ready to support your team and sing and chant and get along with people from every other country and supporting every other team. I would say if you're going to go hard. Do it in the best way possible. Get to as many games as possible. Go for as long as you possibly can. The World Cup for me is a once in a lifetime experience. I guess 3 times in a lifetime experience so far, but it's a very, very special place to go. It's a very, very special experience. So just fully lean into the experience and try to make the absolute most of it, and probably start saving now because it is not a cheap thing to do either.
2026 here I come. Okay?
And I would say, and this is an easy segue, go when Argentina's playing or involved in any way, because at this World Cup it seems to be, and certainly when I was at Brazil, there's nothing like an Argentina game. You can say that about South Americans generally, but the atmosphere specifically that the Argentines bring to football is like nothing I've seen anywhere in the world. I've covered 2 different Euros, the World Cup, regional tournaments, English Premier League. There's just something special about the Argentinians and their spiritual connection to the game.
And they are in the final. So let's get to it. We will review the semi-finals first.
Yep.
Let's go with Argentina versus Croatia.
Yep.
Well, Croatia, you could say that they did so well coming up to the semi-finals. Came from 1 goal down, got back to against Japan. I think against Brazil they were also 1 goal down. But now they face Argentina and they went 2 goals down in the first half. And by then all of us thought like, all right, that's probably it. But then Lionel Messi had to bless us with a moment of pure magic in the second half. Dribbled down the right flank, got Gvardiol completely mixed up, made the pass for Alvarez to score. Beautiful moment. And Argentina are in the finals. Now Messi has a chance to land his ultimate prize.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to Messi in a moment, but let's just wrap up with Croatia first. I'd love to know your thoughts on Croatia. What I would say about them is they just went one tournament too far.
Yeah.
They were overachieving. Modric for 20 minutes was very good. And then once I think Argentina scored, pretty much game over. They took it as far as they could. But when I watch Croatia, I can't help but feel about Singapore. I see Croatia and I think about Singapore. I see Croatia's 3.9 million population. They're an independent country since 1991. And a war-torn, war-ravaged country at that, you know, in terms of where they came from and how they came to be as an independent nation. But they have a football culture. They support the national game from top to bottom, both public funding and private funding. So if any Singaporeans are watching this, if you want to unleash the raw, in what year is it? 20 what? 30?
34?
Look at Croatia. They're smaller than you, but they have a deeply ingrained football culture. And you look at Croatia and you think, a country like Singapore, we can't really have any excuses, really, when you look at what they've achieved. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think they had a great tournament. I think everyone thought they were a little bit too old, a little bit too tired, a little bit too slow, but they moved the ball so well. And really, I thought in large parts of that Argentina game, they actually outplayed them.
Yeah.
And, you know, Australia versus Argentina was a close game as well. Argentina had a lot of the ball, and then it takes one moment of magic from Messi, and all of a sudden you're one goal down, and then you've got the whole game to chase. And, you know, Croatia had a bit of a similar moment. They had that 50-50 penalty given to them, and the keeper came out, made himself big, and the referee decided to, you know, award the pen, which you've seen given sometimes and sometimes not. And all of a sudden you're chasing the game, and your game plan totally changes. But I thought they played extremely well, and yeah, boy, for a small country, the footballing legacy they've got is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and I thought in that game, that was Argentina there. That was the closest facsimile, if you like, of Argentina 86, where they weren't quite a one-man team. They're still a good side, Argentina, just as Argentina were in 86. They had a decent striker then. They've got a decent striker now in Alvarez. I think he's terrific. You've got McAllister, I thought, played well in midfield. But in fairness, he plays for Brighton, you know, and they've got a couple of players in there from Benfica, Fernandez. It was Messi. As it was with Maradona in 86, it will be again. So I thought their victory against Croatia was well-deserved, but it really reminded me of Argentina in 86, where it's one man, one special fella, the GOAT, making the difference, and he'll have to do it again.
We hope it does again, but they've got to have a big task ahead because France will be in their way. They are the defending champions, and in the other semi-final, they face Morocco, the story of the tournament by far. And, you know, Morocco gave it as best as they could, but frankly speaking, the injuries caught up with them.
Yeah.
The two central midfielders, one of them got injured. Both of them were injured in the previous match against Portugal, but then both of them tried to play, but the first one during the warm-ups, he said cannot play anymore.
Yeah.
So he's out. Then the captain, Roman Saez, which has been a revelation of the tournament.
Yep.
And then he lasted 25 minutes. By then they are 1-0 down really. And no, it's just a match too far for Morocco. And so France won 2-0. Also, like Argentina, I think they took their chances. While Morocco, they created plenty of chances. They hit the post.
Very good.
Couple of times, but you know they just couldn't get it past them, and then France hit back, score.
What did you think of Morocco at the World Cup? I'm sure their fans, we're watching it on TV, but to me, they are the story of the World Cup. Unless Messi lifts the trophy, Morocco will be the thing that I'll remember. What are they like there?
I think, you know, the Morocco story brings two things to mind for me for the World Cup. And the first thing is that the travelling fans, especially for these African teams, these North African teams, were incredible. So Australia played against Tunisia, and in the stadium we had our little pocket of Australian fans. We were trying to make as much noise as possible, but we were totally drowned out by 40,000 Tunisian fans.
40,000?
Wow.
Extraordinary.
Whistling every time we had the ball, and the songs that would catch on across the stadium were absolutely deafening. So it must be so oppressive for the opposing team to play against a team like that. And you know, Morocco fans were exactly the same, and I think Argentina has had a similar effect as well. The other thing that comes to mind when I think about Morocco, Croatia, in a way the way Australia played, some of the way the Asian teams played up until the round of 16, Saudi Arabia against Argentina, is that the power balance and power dynamics of world football are changing.
Absolutely.
And I think what this World Cup has shown more than any other World Cup is that it is anyone's game to win now.
Yeah.
There have been more upsets of this World Cup, I think, than any other World Cup of recent times. And that shows that if you come in with a plan, if you're well organized, if you have talent, aggression, pace, and strength, and you're well coached, you can beat anyone on the world stage.
Totally agree with you on that. But I also want to add that, from the looks of Morocco and Croatia, they have to play 6 to 7 games to reach, 6 games to reach the semi-finals. And they are almost at their limit of their abilities already. And now that FIFA wants to expand the World Cup to 48 teams, and then that will include last 32, round of 32.
Ridiculous.
That means 8 games for these non-traditional teams to negotiate. And they might say that, having more teams in the finals means those teams can also take part in the World Cup. But the thing is that you are actually making them more difficult to get past into the later stages of the tournament.
You're taking out the lottery element, the sense of jeopardy as well, right? Because you've got a lengthy qualification progress to begin with, but you've almost removed the jeopardy element from that because extra teams will qualify anyway. Then you've got this long, tedious, protracted finals itself, when it's not really the finals, is it? Because if you've got 32, right? 32 teams there, they're going to play each other in what will almost be a round-robin system. You'll remove the jeopardy element again. You're right that a team like Morocco and Croatia, they can and Japan to a lesser extent, you can sneak through on the penalties here or there, but you can't do it over a long period. The cream will rise to the top eventually, as it's done with France. So you'll end up getting to the same destination, but it will just take longer. It'll be slower, and your lesser teams, in inverted commas, will tire quicker. They won't have the squad depth that the other sides have.
Happened in Morocco.
But I do think, just to add to that, I do think about Morocco that you make such a good point, Matt, about if you have a clear directive and you go for it. Because I didn't think France were that good in the semi-final. I actually think it was one of their weakest performances. A lot of injuries. They had a very young midfield there. Fofana came in. Chouamini's there, but Fofana had to come in because of another injury. And Morocco still went for it. I actually thought it was quite an ordinary French performance. And it just reminds me again, I don't want to pick on the Gareth Southgate again, but this idea that if you just, yes, of course you have a structure and a discipline and so on, but if you really go for it, a team like Morocco or Croatia, there is always a chance that you can beat France. With the players that they had, if England had the mentality that Morocco had in the semi-final, there's no way they would have lost that game. There's no way. We'd be talking about England in the final now. So I do think, as Matt's point, the gap is narrowing, and I do think the established heavyweights, like England, for example, they have to be slightly more proactive, I think, tactically.
And I think you saw the cost of some complacency.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to call it arrogance as well from some of the so-called
Germany,
heavyweights.
Spain, England.
Correct. Exactly. There's no reason that the likes of Germany and Spain and Uruguay shouldn't have gone further in this competition, but they failed to win the games that they should be winning. And was it down to complacency? Was it down to not enough preparation? Were they simply out-muscled, out-fought on the day? Perhaps. So I think they're going to have to bring their A game to a much better way in the next iteration.
Couldn't agree more. Go on.
Argentina almost fell in the first hurdle, lost to Saudi Arabia. But I think now they've recovered so spectacularly, and now they are in the finals.
Well, they were a whisker away from a last-minute Australian equaliser as well in the 97th minute of the game. And in an alternate universe, that goal goes in, and who knows where we're sitting right now. But
they surprised just briefly. They surprised me, the Aussies.
They surprised me
going into the tournament. I don't think many people saw that coming. I expected 3 defeats. I've got to be honest.
Well, my expectation. So we have a long and painful history with World Cup qualification, especially. It took us 32 years to make our second World Cup. That was in 2006, and we've been managing to qualify pretty regularly, but we've not been performing very well at the World Cup itself. We've had one win since 2010. So I went to the World Cup thinking if I can just see a goal, I'll be a happy fan. And the fact that I came away with 2 great wins against Tunisia and Denmark, and qualifying for the round of 16 for the second time ever, it was a momentous occasion for Australian football fans.
Did you wish that I should have bought the last 16 ticket?
I actually had the last 16 ticket, but I was 10 nights away from a young baby and a wife, so I thought I'd better come home. But I'm sure someone had a great time with my ticket. So it was great, and it really galvanised the Australian football support back home as well.
Fantastic.
And it shows you what you do. If you have a plan, a structure, a long-term goal in place, Singapore, you know what to do, all right? Unleash the roar a little bit sooner. Right, let's move into the final then. So we've got France, We've got Argentina. Let's start with France. Now, the thing about France that impresses me, I didn't think they played well in the semi-final particularly, but they never really looked like losing either. They just have this, cliche but it's true, this big tournament experience. They don't panic. Hugo Lloris, Griezmann, Varane in defence, perfect, almost impregnable. They never really panicked against anybody, not Morocco, not England. You always felt that if the ball falls to Griezmann at the right time, he will find Giroud. You just give Mbappe a second or two, he will do enough. And I think that's been the difference with the French as opposed to anybody else at this tournament, including Argentina. They never seem to get flustered. I think that'll be a big difference.
So for me, our first podcast of the World Cup, I said France will be the major flop of the tournament.
Yeah. We do remember that, Jay, don't
Yes,
we?
you
We do
know,
remember
yeah.
that. And so does everybody else who saw it when
everybody
it went
was
viral.
like slamming me now. Okay, I'm eating a humble pies. I take that back. They were absolutely
Just
brilliant.
remind again, who was my flop?
Belgium.
Thank you. And who was my flop player? Lukaku.
yeah.
Thank you. Carry on.
Okay. So anyway, what I'm really admire, because I predicted they'll be flopping because they had so many injuries.
Yeah.
Benzema, Pogba, Kante.
And again in the
Kante.
semi-final.
In the semi-finals. And then Lucas Hernandez got injured in the group stages. They just soldiered on. If you think, bringing back to England again, if the similar players like Harry Kane, Henderson and Declan Rice get injured, I don't think England would have made it that far.
No way at all.
But look at France. From the group stages, they were doing fine. Tunisia loss was inconsequential. But every game they like you said,
They do enough.
They do enough, took their chances. And this is the most important thing, I think, for both finalists. They took their chances well.
And Deschamps, sorry, Matt, but Deschamps gets a lot of criticism for being a pragmatist, not unleashing his full creative depth. He has done since, 2016 onwards, plays that pretty regimented 4-3-3. But he gets results. They're always there or thereabouts. They got to the final of the Euros 2016. They won the World Cup in 2018. They're in the final again. It may not always be the prettiest, and he may not be fully utilising the creative potential, but it works.
Yeah, look, I think, they look at the France-England game. France always going forward with the ball.
Yeah.
They're aggressive. Through the midfield, they move the ball around really well. They've got such high quality. I'm not sure we've seen them get out of third gear yet. I think the match against Morocco was probably the best match they could possibly have because Morocco gave them a bit of a fright.
Yeah.
I think Morocco with their pace and intensity and aggression, probably the best warm-up you could possibly have for a World Cup final.
Oh.
I think they'll need to find another gear against an extremely revved up Argentina. But like you said, you give France, a little centimetre and they're going to score a goal with it.
Yeah.
They're just that clinical.
But you're right, Morocco did give Argentina almost a template because my favourite player at the tournament, certainly fullback, is Hakimi, who was magnificent, a teammate at PSG with Mbappe and Messi. He didn't even bother with Mbappe in a way. He just said, I'm playing my game. Yes, of course, I'll defend you when I have to. But whereas Kyle Walker, it was a man-to-man job for the whole game, they effectively neutered each other. Hakimi went, no, I'm bombing forward. Every opportunity I get, I'm going. And they didn't triple team Mbappe. They didn't even double team him at times. Yeah. It was just one marker. If you don't have the ball, I'm going forward. And Argentina must be looking at that and thinking, well, who have they got? They've got Molina at the right back, the Atletico Madrid guy. There's no reason why they can't play the same game. Not neglect him, obviously, but just play your game.
That's knockout tournament for you. You have to go for it, take your chances. Otherwise, if you play defensive, you can't get your initiative ahead, and then you really have to depend on whether your opponent plays a lousy game or not. Which is not really proactive. Yeah.
So what do you think, Matt, the final?
Yeah, I think, my head would tell me that I think France have too much quality. I have not been super impressed with Argentina, actually. I think Messi is dragging them kicking and screaming all the way to the final.
Yeah.
He is a genuine game winner. Obviously, he's a legend of the game. And he's going to have to play, out of his skin if Argentina are going to get a win. But I think France probably have too much quality across the park. and I think they'll probably come away with it. But I would love, and my heart and my support is going to be with Argentina for the final. I want that. I want that romance of Messi to settle the debate once and for all, to lift the trophy. I think he deserves it, and I think he can do it.
But do we? I take the point. But do we need to still settle the debate at this point?
For me,
the guy's got 7 Ballon d'Ors. I think he scored 96, 97. I got it written down here somewhere. Goals for his country already, regardless of what happens in the final. 7 Ballon d'Ors, 4 Champions Leagues. He's won tournaments, trophies with Argentina. That gets forgotten. Yeah. Is there any debate at this point?
I think we just want to shoot down Piers Morgan.
Yeah, of course. The Ronaldo geeks.
But but okay. I mean, Messi, obviously, I feel that he deserves this final moment of glory. Although I also in my mind also thinking like maybe France is just a bit too much for Argentina. But Argentina have sort of like kept growing since that Saudi defeat, kept improving. And then against, they face some really tough opposition. Netherlands are no pushovers. And somehow they managed to pull through, claw their way through. Obviously, some parts are a bit unsavory, but this feels like the whole team also wants Messi to, push for that final for Messi. And sometimes belief can somehow translate into some kind of momentum for you to go through. Think of Italy in 2006. That team wasn't that spectacular either, but they had a belief after their scandal in Syria scandal. They just we're gonna do it for our league. We're gonna do it for our country, and then somehow they just managed to push it through. There's a bit of me who said okay, that might be enough to get Messi to his title, but obviously it's gonna be a really really tough battle against France.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's all if buts and maybes, but we all know it's going to come down to one GOAT, one Argentine legend. I'm talking about Lionel Scaloni, the West Ham legend who played 13 games. When he was on loan at Upton Park, he played 13 games in 2006. So everything you're seeing from Argentina now came from the academy. The West Ham Academy, Upton Park.
The other Lionel.
Yeah, the other Lionel. Exactly. Now, of course, it's going to be about Messi because, as I said earlier, to me, this is 86 all over. Alvarez is a good player, very, very good player. And they've got a good fullback there, as I mentioned before. But they're greater than the sum of their parts. It's all about Messi. If you look at France as a contrast, Mbappe has been neutralised in a couple of games, but they find a way. Argentina doesn't have a Griezmann. Argentina, in some ways, doesn't even have a Giroud. I'm not saying Alvarez is not a better player than Giroud, but a wily, tenacious, dogged, tournament veteran who never gets flustered. We talked about him before. I love Giroud. Put a cross in the box and Giroud will put it away. High or low, on the deck, in the air. He will finish. He's old school, 36, but he doesn't really miss. They only need 1 or 2 chances and France can wrap this one up. So it really does have to come down to Messi for Argentina.
And if you talk about Griezmann, then Messi is Argentina's Griezmann, the free roaming player who picks the spots and does his magic.
But he's also their Griezmann.
He's also
their
Mbappe.
Mbappe. He can be their Giroud. He can score with either foot. He could be a Dembele. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, look, we're supposed to be neutral on this, but for me, Messi has to win. The idea of Mbappe having 2 World Cup winners' medals and Messi having none. That's like Steven Gerrard not having a Premier League title and David May having the treble.
You have to mention it, right?
How could Manchester United's David May be a treble winner and Liverpool's Gerrard have nothing, have no Premier League? And that's the only time you'll see David May compared to Messi. That's why people listen to this podcast, to get those kind of comparisons. So sentimentally, not even sentimentally, technically, professionally, on any analysis you want, you've got to want Messi, man.
Yeah, look, and you drew the comparison between this Argentina team and previous World Cup winning Argentina teams. If Messi can get his team over the line on this one, then for me, he is in the same conversation as Pele and Maradona. He has brought a team all the way through the tournament and probably won the World Cup for a reasonably high-performing yet kind of mediocre team. And I hope it happens. Yeah. That's where my support is going.
I picked him as my player of the tournament.
You did?
At the start.
You did, yeah.
So I'm hoping him and Argentina fulfill my predictions.
Yeah, that'll make up for your French flops.
Yes, made up for my French flop.
Well, just to recap, the man's got 96 goals for his country, 7 Ballon d'Ors, as I said. He scored 11 goals in the competition, which is an Argentine record. He's got 8 assists in the World Cup. That's the same as a guy called Diego Maradona. It's all set up. It's all set up. Just a couple of moments of magic. Look, make it happen. This has been the year that we've all hated, right? COVID hasn't gone away. VAR hasn't gone away. The Ukraine war hasn't gone away. Just end the year on something positive, please. Something that must happen. Messi's magic should settle this World Cup.
Poor French people.
I think we all want a new winner as well, don't we?
Absolutely.
I'm a bit
France.
sick of the Frances and the Germanys and the Spains. I want a new,
Good shout.
A different nation on that trophy for a change.
Yeah, and 35 years since Argentina last won the World Cup.
Before Messi was born. They won it. He was born in 87. They won it in 86. So Messi hasn't even seen his country win the World Cup in his lifetime.
Please. Football gods, please.
Yeah. Don't make Messi the David May of international football, right? No, the Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard. Mbappe is the David May of international football. Right, let's have some predictions.
Oh, wow. So if I go with my heart, I would say Argentina 1-0. Messi scores the winner in the 90th minute.
Matt?
I'll go with a 1-1 with Argentina winning on penalties.
1-1 with Argentina winning. Oh, that's a good shout. My head still says France, yeah, Mbappe. But I don't care. It's been a terrible year. Let's finish on a high. Argentina, 2-1. Giroud will score 1 because I like Giroud. Giroud will score 1. Messi will score 2. He'll win the Golden Boot, the Golden Ball, and the World Cup, and it'll be the greatest swan song
And
in
everything
international
about the
football
Qatar
history.
will be forgotten.
Everything about Qatar will be forgotten, and we'll all come out singing.
It's Messi's coronation.
Singing, and then we'll all go, Messi where? Messi where? Where's Messi? Where's Messi? He's holding up the World Cup. You heard it here first. What do you think, more importantly? What do you think? How is this World Cup final going to play out? How has Qatar been as a host? Do you agree with Matt? Let us know. Send all your comments to
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on Twitter, and Yahoo SEA on TikTok.
Fantastic. And we'll see you again soon with Messi holding the World Cup aloft. You heard it here first. See you soon.
Thanks, Matt, for joining.
Thanks, Matt.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Go Messi.
Go Messi.